Hello, my friends, and welcome to another episode of the Machine Shop Mastery Podcast. I am feeling all warm and fuzzy right now because I just had such a fun conversation with Matt Fortner of Progress Machining in Muskegon, Michigan. And Matt is a guy that sort of worked in industry, sort of the manufacturing kind of centric world for a long time at Parker and other places in plumbing. But he got the itch to do something more concrete, to create value in the economy, to build things. And he decided to buy a machine shop. And I just love this storyline so much. I hope you share this episode with someone that is not in machining that might be interested in something really fulfilling and challenging and worthwhile. Because Mark just talked about the story of buying the shop, what he went through to actually get the deal closed, which apparently he was actually the fifth person that had tried. He ended up realizing there was 4 other people that tried to buy the business prior to him. So just to underscore how hard it is to get a successful conclusion, but some great stories of the improvements he made, the stories about the previous owner, including, you will not believe this, pulling out his pistol and laying it on his desk when he would negotiate with the bankers. So just a fantastic story, a great outcome. He's done a ton of improvements in this business, put a lot of love back into it, really solidified the team, cut out a ton of waste, and just doing smart things, learning lessons along the way about the difference between cash flow and profitability. But it's a great conversation and it's inspiring, and I hope you love it. I know you'll love it, but please do share it with someone else that could be inspired enough that they go find a machine shop for sale near them and buy it and do what Mark has done here. So anyway, let's get right into the episode. Matt Fortner from Progress Machining, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, good afternoon, Paul. I guess morning for you. So happy to be here. It's a little surreal. Usually listen to you guys on audio. And I know before we begin, I just want to give a shout out to all you guys for the Metalworking Nation and the MakingChips podcast. It could be a lonely and tough job, running a machine shop and being in charge. And friends and family are really supportive, but there's only so much they can listen to me talk about a machine shop. And so I listened to your whole series, and I just find myself driving and nodding and smiling and just connecting, psychically, I guess, with the guests that you have on and all of you hosts. And it's just been very impactful listening to those shows. It's helped me immensely. It's hard for me to say thank you enough, but thank you.
Oh man, that warms my heart, fills my cup. We do this, Mike and Nick and I do this for just that purpose, right? We know it's hard at the top. We know it's the hardest business in the world. We know it's hard to talk to your wife or your spouse or whatever about, all the issues on a daily basis. And we all face them. And it's great to have an outlet to share, to listen, to have a community. You and I first got sort of at least familiar with each other when you reached out to me on December 4th of 2022. And you said, hey, Paul, your podcast is exactly what I needed to listen to this weekend. I bought a machine shop in February from an 81-year-old machinist who had a great customer base, but really let the company slide. And basically, you're happy, which is awesome. You're happy with the choice to work for yourself and make products again. But the scale of the fixing that needed to happen is kind of overwhelming. So you said it helped to center yourself and remember the basics. So thank you for reaching out way back 3 years ago. And I'm glad that MakingChips and this podcast have been something you can center yourself on and do what you're doing, because we need more people like you buying machine shops and growing them and making them better and continuing our manufacturing economy. So thank you so much for what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. It's essential that we're all working together. And I just like the attitude you guys bring too. It's just it's teamwork. We're all on the same team here and we're all trying to pull together. So
1,000%. Yeah. So let's hear about your background, Matt. What did you do before buying Progress Machining? Sounds like you might have been making things at some point, because you said making things again. And then what crazy idea did you get to buy a machine shop? And let's talk about Progress Machining as well.
Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur since I was a little kid, but I'll kind of start at college. I went to college, and I've always been one to kind of gravitate towards what I've enjoyed. So my college, my parents really wanted me to go. I did not go for machining. I did not go for anything technical. I got a philosophy degree, and I really enjoyed critical thinking. I enjoyed thinking through problems and debating and really critical analysis. When I got out of college, I started working at a plumbing company, and I was in the customer service department. And so I was dispatching plumbers and learning about plumbing. They pulled me into a sales role. I started selling water treatment equipment, 100% commission out on the road.
Oh, wow.
And I was at this time
commission.
thinking, oh yeah, I was
That's sink or swim right there.
Oh, it was, yeah. But I mean, I was out door knocking. I was doing everything I had, I could do to make ends meet, and it was a really good challenge. I realized that I wanted to own my own company a long time ago, and so I was sitting there puzzling, how am I going to get my own company? How am I going to do that? I don't have any money, and everything I read was saying get into real estate. So I started. Bought my first house in the late '90s, and I wrote my two buddies in. And we started flipping houses in 1999, and we kind of flipped them, and then we started keeping them as rentals, and we kind of built that up, and then suffered through the 2008 housing slump. But
sure.
We kept all of our real estate. And during that time, I went back to school because I really wanted to get some business fundamentals. So I went back and got my master's degree. I got my MBA. And right when I wrapped that up and got into plumbing, hats off, great guys. And they're like, hey, stick around. You could be an owner here. And I thought, man, that sounds great, but I gotta, you live one time. You got to go out and figure out what you're going to do. So I was called by a recruiter, and I got hired by a French company to launch a fitting range in the water treatment industry in the U.S. And so I became a channel account manager and started traveling around. Ted Moyer, a great mentor of mine when I first started doing that. And Legree got purchased by Parker Hannifin, which was a really large industrial manufacturer.
Yeah, for sure. Huge name.
Probably walk around the shop, you'll probably see hoses and fittings and connectors
everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah. So the division that bought Legree was about 45 minutes south of my house. So they pulled me in, and I went from being a guy on the road working from home to a guy driving to an office. But it was great. I had good career progression there, product manager, business development manager. And I was at Parker for almost 8 years. So many opportunities there. The training was just amazing. I took lean classes, full week-long trainings, 3 of them. I was taking acquisition training. My job was to conceive of new products to develop. I had 2 engineers and a product manager, and then I would travel out to interview people. So, I did a project on the, sterilization beer market and the guys that go clean beer lines. So I'd travel out and I'd meet guys that would clean beer lines. I'd go to the bar and get a drink. I'd go out to breweries and see how they clean their beer lines. And then I would come up with the engineering, like, here's the fittings we need to make. Here's the pressure they need to hold, the chemicals they've got to handle. And so
that's fun. That's cool.
It was great. Yeah. I got targeted interview training at Parker. I got developing change champion training, week long, how to make changes in an organization. And that kind of, it was going really well, and it kind of culminated with, I won one of the winners of a global Shark Tank competition, and went to Cleveland and had to pitch my idea for connecting a water system to a dialysis machine, and then it would send the pressures up, into the cloud so that you could see if the filter was clogging up, remotely. Landed some big business, and I had set up an assembly cell in our factory to build water for sterilization units. From a sale I had landed, and we got a new general manager, and it was my 3rd or 4th general manager. I'd been there for 7 years, and I remember walking him back there, and I said, okay, I got this $2 million deal. We've got the assembly cell here. We got all the planning, all the parts are here, and here's how we're going to make it. And nice guy, but he said, he's a new guy. He says, well, I'm not really sure if this is the direction we want to go at the division. I got to sit down and figure it out. And I'm like, man, it's just tough to keep reselling over and over. So I started looking at other roles at Parker, and it was all going to be, relocate to, California or Cleveland. And I thought, well, let me see if there's something more local. At this point, my 3rd kid is on the way. So I've got 3 daughters. And traveling less was nice, but I was still traveling for Parker. I was still, in Asia every other year and in Europe. Mm-hmm. And so I called another recruiter and connected to Padnos Recycling, and I don't have a whole lot on my LinkedIn about it. Recycling can be a very competitive industry, But they brought me in and they said, hey, we got a metal buying team, and we need to structure this team. And I'm like, okay, I can do that. So, I started out with 6 metal buyers, and then I kind of expanded that to a team of 12 with some inside support, and we onboarded Salesforce so we could track our thousands of accounts. And we had, 3 car flatteners. I mean, we were crushing 1,000, 2,000 tons of cars, per month. We had thousands of industrial accounts, and my job was go with your team. I'd schedule and I'd go through all these shops, and it's like, okay, where's the scrap coming from? And I would be in stamping plants, and I was in, places where they're doing fab work and flame cutting. And I was in scrap yards with junkyard dogs. I mean, I was hitting every level where metal came from, across the state of Michigan. And I just remember thinking, I think I like this. Look at these guys making these cool stuff. I mean, I think I could do this, right? There's just all these shops. I mean, there's just hundreds of shops, and you just keep running into them over and over and over again. So the pandemic hit, and I was selling, my friends and I were selling our second to last rental property, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'll probably put a new deck on the house, and I'm like, I didn't really want to do that. I was getting kind of grumpy. And I'm like, why am I so aggravated? I'm going to get a check, and I'm just annoyed. And I forget what book I was reading at the time, but it triggered my mind that, why did I buy real estate? I bought real estate for a reason. So I buy my own company. Meanwhile, I got the golden handcuffs, just kind of click, click, click. And I thought, I got to do this. Like, I got to do this now. And so I started looking for, shops that were for sale. I just went online. I'm like, machine shops for sale. And I just started looking. And
that's awesome.
Hats off
and why a machine shop versus some other type of business for sale?
I looked at plumbing as well. I looked at plumbing, running a plumbing company as well. And there's something about making things. I'm a builder at heart, and whether I'm building a sales team, whether I'm building a pipeline of products I can make, that's where I add the most value. And so I really wanted to get back into doing something where I produce a product that adds value to the economy and my customers. And so that was why I kind of did that. Yeah. So I started looking, and I told my wife, and she's like, yeah, I think you could do that. And I'm like, really? Cause I'm doing pretty well here. She's like, yeah, I think you could do it. And my friends, Andy and Ray, like everybody else in my sphere was like, oh man, that's risky. Don't do that. That's super risky. Why would you even think of doing that? And, but my closest friends were on board, and they kind of pumped me up, and they're like, yeah, you should go for it.
Manufacturers, what is your biggest headache? Is it measuring improving profitability, gaining efficiencies with AI and automation, maybe tightening up your cybersecurity, maybe getting your business ready to sell? At CLA, their goal is to know you and help you with challenges like these and more. Every day, CLA helps manufacturers tap into millions in revenue and cost savings, like one manufacturer that boosted capacity and revenues by 15 to 20%. Visit CLAconnect.com to hear real success stories and learn how you can grow your top and bottom line.
Nice. That's what good friends are for, and partners. Yeah. Okay. So how did you find Progress Machining?
So I go online, and Lance, the prior owner here, had a broker. And so I reached out to him, and I remember walking through the shop for the first time. And it was a Friday. And Muskegon is really cool. West Michigan is really cool for everybody gets off early on Friday. So usually production stops at 10 a.m. and people go get in their Jeeps and they go ride on the dunes, or they get on their motorcycles. And it's just kind of the culture here. So I remember stopping by on a Friday, and I walked through the shop, and I mean, I don't know anything at this point, right? And he didn't even turn the lights on. And I know why now, so I'm walking through this dark shop, and he's kind of pointing stuff out, and I'm looking at CNC machines, and I don't know a Haas from a Doosan, from a, anything from an Akuma. I don't really even know the difference between a lathe and a mill. I mean, that was like kind of the level I was at Parker. I did a lot of injection molding, and they definitely did a lot of brass fittings, and I had been in manufacturing, but I didn't have a real understanding of what I was fully getting myself into. I had analyzed all the numbers, right? I'm a big data guy, love finance, love economics. I could see it was a diverse customer base. I researched them. I went through the credit card receipts. I mean, I did a forensic analysis through this company, and I'm like, he's making money, right? He's making money, and I could see how much he's making, and I could see where he's spending it, and he was kind of making it happen. And I'm like, all right, I think I'm going to go for it. Made an offer, and it was tough to get to the closing line, but yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of obstacles to actually closing a transaction on buying any business, but a shop in particular. Did you have bank financing, SBA loan, some money from your houses? I mean, just a little bit of everything, or what? How did you finance
a little bit of everything. So I worked with Huntington Bank. They were great. And what they did is they showed me this ROBS program, ROBS. It's a retirement asset rollover financing, which is very useful if utilized correctly, but it's also something that can be very dangerous. It's something that the IRS watches very carefully, because you can pull money out of a retirement account and then you can buy, a company, and you get your money out tax-free to put into a company. So the way I financed it was through this ROBS program, and I used one of my 401ks, and then the second to last house sale that we did, and my two buddies are silent partners, with a small percentage. So they got some skin in the game. I had to use my personal house as collateral.
And your wife was on board for that.
She was all right with that. And actually, my two buddies had to use their houses for collateral until I got out of the loan. I know one of them. Yeah. So I had a little bit of pressure, when I reached out to at that point. I got, my entire life on collateral. But yeah, we pulled it off, and got the financing, and I was out of it was an SBA loan, but I got out of the SBA loan. So then interest rates started ratcheting up, right? So everything was really good after the pandemic, and I've got this loan at 6.25%, and the payment's easy. Well, then the Fed starts raising rates, and a year later. So when I reached out to you December, they started raising rates kind of in that springtime, and they got up to about 10.5%. And so
you had a variable rate loan? It
wasn't fixed? Yeah, I had an SBA variable rate loan, which seemed brilliant in 2021 when we've had low interest rates for a decade, and everybody then at that point was forecasting continued low interest rates. So it took me 2 years, and I got out of that SBA loan, and I got a fixed rate, and the bankers were really eager to get me out of the loan. So the banker I had had worked with Lance, the prior owner, and his boss had also managed the shop. So, the loans for Lance. Wow. So they knew the company really well. And both of them, to give you an idea what Lance is like, his negotiating tactics, he'd have the banker in here sitting at his desk, and then he'd open his drawer up and he'd take his pistol out, set his gun on the desk, right, while they were negotiating rates, right? And both of these guys, they joke about it when I see them now, but you can see just a little, hint of like, they were probably crapping their pants, back then, right? It's funny now, but that's
that is
a little bit about Lance. He's a character.
Wow, that's a new negotiation strategy I've never considered. So
yeah, me neither.
I don't advocate for.
Nope.
It's a great story.
He never pulled his gun out at me, but I saw it a few times. He'd open his drawer. I knew it was there. So.
Oh, wow. Okay. So you got the deal. You came in. How did the introduction to the team go? Just kind of walk us through the first few days and weeks, and what was the transition like with Lance? Like, how long did he stay around? And
yeah, it was pretty tough. So I hadn't closed yet. I gave Padnos a 2-month notice, right? Typically you give 2 weeks, but I was pretty close with Jonathan Padnos and the family, and I said, look, I'm going to do this, and they were all for it. So I had 2 months, but I hadn't closed by the time my 2 months was up, because Lance was kind of dragging stuff out. And since then, I've talked to 4 people that have tried to buy the shop from him. So my job ended.
To you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Wow.
So my job ends, right? And I just moved into the front office area, and I sat there next to Angie, the office manager. And it was still another 2-3 weeks until finally the loan went through. And I told him, I'm like, well, this is happening. I mean, I'm sitting here, right? I don't have a job, Lance. So, I mean, we're going to get this over the line. So we got it over the line. But as you know, and, Mike Payne talks a lot about, the value of the inventory. And Lance was very very, he's super generous and nice. And at the same time, he's got a pretty strong like greed streak, which you almost had to be a street fighter to be, a machinist back in the day and hold it
Oh,
together.
sure. Absolutely.
And so he had this real concern because I had these notes with him, for $500,000, when is he going to get his money back? And one of the stories he would tell me when we were traveling around visiting customers is when he bought his first car and he didn't have any money, and he's walking to his job, and he's walking by an auto dealership, and they said, "Hey, you should buy a car. I see you walking to work." He says, "I don't have, all I have is this nickel. I have one Indian head nickel." And the guy at the auto dealership says, "Give me your nickel. I'm going to give you this car for this price, and every week you come here and you pay me for that car." And that was how he bought his first vehicle. I mean, this is a guy that he didn't finish high school. He couldn't read, right? He never, his reading skills were very poor. I think he was kicked out of high school in maybe 10th grade. But the guy is a guy that just a bulldozer, like you would not mess with this guy. And he just pushed his way through, the whole way. And so, he was concerned again. And so I went on Amazon or eBay and I bought a nickel, an old one, right? And I gave it to him. I said, "Look, Lance, I'm going to pay you back. Here's a nickel. You hold on to this and I'll get you your money back." And so
that's awesome.
I paid him back in 2 years because the banker was like, "Yeah, we got to get this done. We got to get Lance out of the picture. He's stopping in this office all the time, trying to see what's going." Yeah, going in to see what's going on. Well, I joke about it, but he was coming in a lot, and at one point I said, "Lance, every time you come in here, you're costing me like $200 in productivity." And that was like his love language, right? All of a sudden it just like clicked. He's like, "Oh yeah, I'm costing him money." So at that point he stopped like coming in all the time.
Yep.
I asked the team, I asked my right hand man, Casey here, I'm like, "How long do you want him here to, help with the transition?" And without missing a beat, he said 15 minutes.
Okay.
I'm like, "All right, we're going to get him out of here and then we're going to just figure it out." So.
Right. Man, what a story. How many folks were at the company when you bought it?
There's 21 people here when I got the company.
Okay.
And we're down a little bit right now. We're down 25% this year. So sales wise, it was like 1.7, 1.8, 1.9. And now it looks like this year, we might end at like 1.6. So it's kind of the first down year of experience. But we are 11 and a half people strong right now. And we were at 16 and churning out the same amount. And so the amount of inefficiency that was here that we've been cutting, getting rid of it has really allowed us to have a much smaller, closer knit team. Right. 8 of the 11 were here when I bought the shop. So.
Okay. And, you mentioned in your first message to me, there was a lot more fixing than you imagined there would be. So you obviously said you did a lot of due diligence. You poured through the records and looked at all the numbers, but let's talk about the things that needed the fixing that weren't apparent to you in your due diligence until you were the one in the hot seat.
Yeah. So I pulled a record of my scrapping because, I had some numbers in my head from how long I've been doing it, but over the 3.5 years, I have scrapped out 60 tons of large steel objects, file cabinets, and just metal. And so
60 tons.
60 tons.
That's
multiple dumpsters. And every time I think I got it done, right, we keep finding stuff in the corners, right? And I can fill up a whole nother dumpster. So the entire upstairs was paper records. I mean, I filled almost an entire dumpster of just empty file cabinets, right? And so we'd be trying to get the orders out. I mean, the place when I got here was it was a dumpster fire. It was like every day was a new emergency that you never knew what you were going to run into. It was I had older machines that were breaking down. I've got one of the first Haas horizontals that's still here at HS1, from 1999, and so my newest machine I think was 2013. And so,
at the time, about almost 10 years old at the time.
Yeah. And, a lot of stuff we were doing. So he had invested in, there was a couple bar feeders, right? He had a lot of pallet changers. So there was good equipment here too, but there was a lot of bad equipment. And then there was just decades of buildup of fixturing tooling that was obsolete, that didn't go to a job, that nobody knew what it was for. And so you'd go to try to get a fixture and you'd have to dig past, 5 fixtures that nobody even knew what they were to kind of find the one that you were running. And so, I kind of went, you go to lean basics, right? The first step in lean would be 5S, right? And I think for a year and a half, we just did S number 1, and that was just sorting through what you need versus what you don't need. And I moved the tool room twice. And I've watched Hoarders episodes, right? And so everybody had kind of lived in this environment and hoarded it all together. And, Lance didn't want to throw anything away. And so it was very difficult to break the psychology of when you're, if you have to look through, this patina covered board of tools, and you can see that the patina has built up on 90% of them, and you can see the 3 that people have used, that the whole thing's just got to go. And you take the 3 that you need, and the amount of effort that it just would take to go through and find all the stuff. So I'm like, all right, we're moving the tool room over here. I talked to a friend of mine, Malcolm, who was a quality manager who's retired, and he would come in and kind of help me out. And he's like, you got to move it. So we're moving it over here, and everything you don't use, just leave it there. And so we moved it all over, and this is over a span of 3 or 4 months, right? And then everything that was left over, I went through stickers one time. I'm like, red stickers, can we throw all this away? And then I didn't throw it away. I didn't want to be the one throwing it away. So then you got to bring, the team in, and everybody has to agree. Yep, we don't want that. We don't use that. And then we throw all that stuff away, and then we bring this stuff back over, and inevitably another pile would be there. And so we just kept shifting around until, I would have people walk into the office that I'm in right now, and people didn't know that there was a door right there. The office was so full.
What? They didn't know there was a door.
There was a door there, yeah. And so people would, and so over the last few years, people would walk in, and if they hadn't been in here for a year or two, they would just be like, "This is amazing. Did you put new lights in?" I'm like, "No, I just been throwing stuff away."
That is hilarious. So were there just filing cabinets in front of the door, or just like a bookshelf, or
where
does the door go to?
Well, it just goes outside into the grass. It goes almost nowhere. But yeah, so so we had a lot of machine breakdowns. We had a lot of fixturing with multiple ops that wasn't on the 4-axis machines that we had, and so there was a lot of garbage.
When you're trying to find equipment financing, Verdant Commercial Capital makes the process easy. With deep experience across 6 industries, including manufacturing, they tailor financing to fit your business, your goals, and your cash flow. Fast decisions, flexible options, and a team that really knows their stuff. When you're ready to grow, upgrade, or innovate, Verdant is the partner to call. Visit verdantcc.com/numbers or search for Verdant Commercial Capital on LinkedIn to learn more.
Yeah. So if summarizing it a little bit, sounds like a ton of tribal knowledge, a ton of, obviously just stuff. And I know, you said he was 80 or so. So, I mean, we're talking the era where everything was precious. You couldn't throw things out. What if you needed it? You're right. Sort of depression level kind of, and that was just the mentality of what you grew up with. So I totally understand that. And then sounds like just a real lack of process and maybe preventative maintenance and just all the like hallmarks of a shop that hasn't been really reinvested in and a fresh mindset pretty much ever. So that's a big uphill battle to so many things to work through. You
could see the history as you're going through. I mean, the things that I found are really cool. Like up here is the first electric calculator, but it weighs 25 pounds, and it would sit on your desk, and they got bought up. And I looked it up, and it's in the calculator museum, so I didn't want to throw it away. But, I found all kinds of relics, but you can kind of see that there was organization at one point. There used to be 50 people here. It used to be hopping.
There was 50 people. Wow.
Yeah. It used to be. Yeah. They used to, he used to do, work for the original aerospace companies back, like design work when they were trying to figure out how to make the airplanes work. I mean, he had stories and history that I've got a lot of respect for.
Absolutely. Wow. Super cool. Okay. So you started months worth of the first S, which is
Yep.
hilarious on the macro level. And then it sounds like you alluded to earlier, you went out with him to visit customers.
Yep.
Let's talk about the customer relationships, how you fostered those, cultivated those. Maybe you had to fire some customers. I don't know if you got into, actual like job costing. Where are we losing money? Where are we doing well?
Mm-hmm.
And sort of refining down that part. But let's sort of talk customer centric for a minute.
Yeah, so really good diverse customer base. And so it's somewhat West Michigan focused and a lot of long-term customers. I think a lot of the customers that we have and we still have, we're kind of used to the style of the shop, which is, maybe, Lance is going to need more than 3 weeks to get the parts out. Here's a large PO and we'll probably see something in a couple months. But they were all really great. And I think I've only fired one customer since I've been here. Definitely did some job costing and digging into the finances. The financial situation was good, and obviously I'm running it more like a professional company where it's not like my personal company. I'm trying to run it as an entity that then pays me. And Angie is my office manager. She's amazing, really, really, really good at what she does, and she was just kind of categorizing expenses where she thought they would go, and Lance would sign checks. And so we definitely went down a whole, so I'm trying to work on the maintenance side, the shop. I'm trying to be more proactive. We're trying to clean up the paperwork was not updated, really starting from the ground floor. And on the accounting side, Angie and I are sitting down and going through expenses and just talking how things should be categorized. And that was really, really important. I mean, anybody who's out there, really, you got to know where your numbers are in order to make good decisions. And machine maintenance was a big one. I mean, it was at first it looked like it was about $10,000 a month in machine maintenance, but as we started digging into it, it was still a really big number. It was more like $7,000 to $8,000 a month. And so we would have, they're older machines, and then they go down, and you're calling somebody or you're sending somebody out in the shop to try to fix it. And so really, you're not even capturing the full cost of trying to maintain. It was almost as much as I was paying, as a mortgage to, have the building and the company, right?
Yeah, sure. So you imagine, did you start purging machines and getting some new ones, or what did you do there?
Yeah. So I got rid of the old Cincinnati horizontal, and I'm told, you can only run this part on there. You can't run it anything else. And I talked to Casey, and he's like, no, we can run that on other machines. So you get rid of the machine that doesn't have a guardrail on it. It's just a big 12-inch spinning blade with, hand movements that just automatically feeds. Like you fall into it, it's not going to stop, right? And it's just, so we got rid of that. I got rid of the grinder that we used once a year, just huge grinder. Swiss machine was costing more in repair work, and we were running small jobs on it. So you start looking at, you have a 12-hour setup and you're running 300 parts. That makes no sense. And we had a lot of setups here that were, 12 hours long, so I'm like, look, we can't have a 12-hour setup. And I remember the setup guy at the time, he's like, well, how fast do you think this should happen? I have to do all these things. And I said, well, your target's 10 minutes. And he's just 10 minutes, like this is 12 hours. And so I did a SMED event. I mean, if anybody out there has a setup that's longer than 1 hour, this is the easiest thing to do. SMED, SMED.
Single minute exchange of dies. We had a slide at the event I just did 2 weeks ago in Chicago.
Yeah.
SMED.
So you don't even have to read
those not in the know. Break us down what you did in that event and what it changed to using what techniques.
So SMED event comes from the Toyota production system, which is an interesting book if you've got, a lot of time and you want to read it. But what I did is I'm like, okay, let's set up this part that takes 12 hours. And I just got a legal pad. And I said, all right, we're starting. And I wrote a time, 6 a.m. What are we doing? Okay, we're going to walk to the tool room, walk into the tool room. Then we walk back to the machine. Okay, now it's 6:06. And I literally I filled, I don't know, 12 pages of legal sheets, and I walked around for 12 hours and I wrote down exactly what we did, every single event and how long it took. Now we're putting in the first tool. Oh, wait, I got the wrong tool holder. Okay, I'm walking back to the tool room to get the right tool holder. I'm breaking it down and I'm writing it all out. And then after you've done all of that, you look at all of your notes, and I went through and highlighted them, and you highlight what actually has to occur to set up the machine while the machine is not running versus what you can do while, ahead of time to prepare.
External and internal setup.
That's exactly it. It's like, oh, it's impossible. Well, it's maybe technically impossible to do it in 10 minutes, but you're focused on machine downtime. You're not focused on the overall setup time. But you could see through the analysis of that setup that we were walking, I forget what the percentage was, wandering around, 15%. I mean, we're basically spending, 2 hours of this setup walking back and forth to the tool room because we didn't have the right tool. It was broken down. We couldn't find it. We were, again, sorting through things to try to pull everything together. And I've done several SMED events, and every time it's enlightening. It costs almost nothing. It's just your time. And you just have to sit down and write it down. And then there's some great videos online that you can watch that'll kind of step you through it. But it requires no money. And you can really open people's eyes on how quickly you can do that.
What did you ultimately get to for setup time on that part number?
On that part, we got to 4 hours. But after that, we don't run that part anymore, but I picked up a tool presetter at an auction. Okay. And so I've gotten a few good finds.
An offline one or in the machine one?
Well, we do have a couple in the machine now, but I got an offline, a Parlec, and that was also a battle, with kind of the old school machinist mentality where, you're gonna set the tool down, you're gonna get an absolute value, but everything we had programmed was off a theoretical point inside of a fixture plate. And so anytime you'd have an individual that would want to go to a machine and do something, you would have an offset. Your Z offset is minus 12 point, whatever. And then you would have to know, right? And I'm preaching to the choir. I'm talking to a whole bunch of people here that know more than I do about this, right?
Well, there's still a lot of people listening that have 12-hour setups. So what you're saying is super relevant.
Okay. So it took us a while to convince people at large that what we needed to do was offline set the tools, get the heights, and that we needed to change our programming in the machine so that it was set off the spindle height, so that anytime, you go into a setup, you kind of know where your orientation is beginning when you're doing your offsets. And if I were to get on my soapbox for a minute on,
Yes, please.
Okay. I know you've got some questions in here about technical training and education, right? And I can divide technology kind of into 4 quadrants. I think for me, there's technology that's really cool that I don't need to know anything about because I'm going to hire somebody else to do it. I think there's technology and training that we need to have at our shop because we're machinists and we're going to make stuff. And then there's 2 other buckets, which I've just been attacking with a vengeance, right? And one of them is you need to have smart technical people. So I would hire people that would come in. An example would be, hey, why are we loading this part and we keep having a misload? Well, that person you hired, when you take it out of op 1, it's against the dead stop of the jaw. And that means when you go to the next vise, that dead stop surface has got to be against the pin on your next vise. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Can't we just set the fixture up so that you can't put it in the wrong way? Like, why do we think we need to have this technical expertise of everybody coming in to operate the machine needs to know that this surface then translates to this surface to then this surface when you're going through these inefficient operations? And so, it's technical. It is, yeah. So the real technology that you want is somebody who understands how to eliminate all that variability from the setups, not go out there and crack the whip at the brand new operator that doesn't somehow know some of these items. And so it felt a lot like, in me coming in as an outsider, not being a machinist, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors out there about the technical nature of the job. And a lot of it it felt here anyway, designed to keep people out more than a necessary understanding to work at a shop and make parts, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. It does. So I think you covered 3 of the 4 quadrants. Is there a 4th one?
Yeah, the 4th one was just things that you had to do to survive at Progress Machining, right? So we had all of these anomalies that nobody else would have to deal with. So like we had a pallet changer, one of our pallet changers, and if you spun it in this way, it would crash into the wall. And so it's like, well, doesn't Jesse know you can't send it in that way? It crashes into the wall when you send it in that way. And I walk out there and I'm like, can we just cut the corner off the fixture? Because then you can send it in either way and you don't have to worry about it. But instead, we would just have this list of things that you would have to know if you're going to work at Progress Machining. And rather than fixing it so that anybody could come in and do it, we would, there was just kind of this, you had to survive here long enough. And I remember walking up to an operator one time who had crashed a machine, and I said, I know you feel like you're walking in the beach at Daytona, but really you're in a minefield in Vietnam. Like that's what working here is. Like at any moment you're going to get blown up because we haven't fixed something, right? So you can't be skipping down the road hitting buttons until we get all this stuff buttoned up. Like it felt very like, and that was part of the chaos of the day to day, right? Another machine crash because we didn't, solve a problem. We just had all these unspoken rules that you had to know.
Welcome to Workholding Wisdom with Larry Robbins, President and CEO of SMW Autoblock, bringing manufacturers practical insights to improve efficiency, precision, and performance.
Larry, thanks for taking our call again, man.
Anytime, man. It's always a pleasure talking to both of you.
So here's what we were just talking about. We're talking about uptime and quick change and all these setup time and all these words that manufacturing leaders use all the time. You come from the world of solving those problems with workholding specifically. So when someone comes to you and you're trying to sell them what might be a more expensive fixture, but it's a quick change solution, how do you help them quantify the value of that quick change?
Nick, I start every conversation with every customer saying, if you're looking for the cheapest solution, you're talking to the wrong guy. We are generally one of the most expensive in the industry. We never apologize for price because we offer quality and reliability, and we offer service that follows that up. So the first things that I always look for when I buy anything, I could care less what it costs. I want to know, how's your service? And if you tell me your service is great and your service is not great, it'll be the last time we ever do business. If you tell me your service needs help, but it's great, I'm always impressed that you're constantly looking to improve. But to be honest with you, setup reduction is a buzzword that's been going on since the 80s. And it strikes me the same as the word partnership does. People overuse the term and don't really understand the meaning. And I've always said a partnership only works when both people win. And automation and workholding are the same way. Unless you buy something that is suited for your situation. That's why flexibility is so important in workholding. When you look at setup reduction, if you're setting up and your machine is idle while you're setting up, first of all, I liken it to when I walk in our shop and somebody's presetting a tool on a machine. I was like, hey, that's a really expensive $650,000 tool presetter. What are you doing?
Exactly.
Why aren't we running chips? Well, we have to set tools.
Yeah.
Well, we own a tool presetter. Why aren't we? Well, workholding's the same.
Yeah.
Why would you put yourself in a position where you're going from one work job to the next and you're going back to taking hours? You break down, you set up, you re-indicate. If you standardize a system on a machine or a platform across multiple machines, you give yourself the ability now for multiple things. You don't limit yourself to one machine. If a machine goes down today, I'm up and running 15 minutes from now because I just moved that fixture and the program apart and I'm done. But people think of setup reduction in a lot of different ways. It should be in every type of workholding, whether it's a vise, a chuck, a mandrel, a collet. You don't have the ability to change from one to the other quickly, repeatably, and accurately. you got the wrong solution.
Yeah. I mean, Mike, we say if you're not making chips, you're not making money to end every episode. And nobody believes that more than the quick change work holding people. But like for you in your shop, give me like a average machine rate you could charge for milling in your area, or depending on the work. I'm sure the answer is it depends. But every minute that you're setting up, you're missing out on that. And that's, I think, the way people need to think about it.
A minute's a couple dollars, right?
Yeah.
So whether that's because you don't have great work holding or because someone's watching a YouTube video, I mean, that 2 minutes is $2, right? And if that happens, I've got 60 spindles, that can start to add up real quick. When you take that across, that could be all of a sudden $120 a minute, right?
Right.
So yeah, whether it's, setup production, the quick change, all those types of things. I mean, it's certainly something we're focused on all the time.
Our focus when we saw somebody work going is 100% spindle uptime. And people look at you, that's ridiculous. There's no such thing as 100. I said, maybe not in today's reality for you. I said, but let me show you by spending some money. And then I get, oh, you're just trying to sell me a product. No, I'm not trying to sell you a product. I'm trying to sell you a concept that's going to make your business more profitable and give you the ability to be better and more competitive than the guy next door trying to bid for the same project you are.
Mm-hmm.
And people are under a huge misconception. People think it depends on what realm you come from. If you come from, and Nick, you and I come from a very similar background where I started out building dedicated work holding. My whole background was tool design, and it was tool design for aircraft parts. So specific, it was disgusting. But I realized early on that was great if we ran a project that went for years at a time, or weeks at a time, or months at a time. But in aerospace, which is where I started my career, you could be working on a B-1 bomber today and an F-16 repair tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the platform is so different, but if I choose the right machine, the right work holding, the right operators, the right tooling, and it is a combination of all those. It's never just one thing. Work holding can give you a return of reduction in setup time and change over time. But if you don't follow through with that with your tooling and your maintenance, if you're not doing all the things you should do, and the other thing with work holding is it's just like a saw and a bandsaw in a machine shop. It's the least paid attention to piece of equipment in your shop until it doesn't work. And then it's like, oh my God, you work holding guys, you're terrible. This thing is dead. When's the last time you greased it and you get the, what? Where does the grease go in?
Yeah, exactly.
And you're like, you've never greased this, Chuck? Well, I've had it for 3 years. I didn't know I had to. And I'm like, how are you holding parts? The guy goes, well, that's a problem. I started throwing parts. Well, you fill it up with grease, and they're like, oh, it works again.
Yeah.
Setup reduction is the same.
Yeah. My Uncle Alvin, Larry, you guys are work holding veterans, and he always used to say the same thing. I don't believe in indicating. So we'd be talking about like why job to job it's taking so long to set up. And they're like, well, you got to put the vise in, you got to tap it, indicate again, tap it, make sure it's all lined up on your T-slot table. And he's like, well, I don't believe in indicating. Like, I refuse to even hear about it. And it just reminds me of some of the stuff you were saying, like this revelation. Why don't you just use a quick change setup that's going to drop in exactly where it's supposed to be, and you can go way faster?
I've had people say to me, well, where's my redemption of my cost? This is a piece of work holding. I don't get any return on this. And I look at them and I go, did you just start doing this? And I'm never insulting, but I am blunt. I'm like, is this your first day on this job? And they just look at me like, no. And I'm like, if that's really how you're running your shop, I can tell you in about 25 minutes how to double your income overnight. And they look at you, that's impossible. Well, if I can put a platform on your machine, and after your operators, and I'll say this to any shop owner, if you're not getting a buy-in from the shop floor to the top floor, and I know it's cliche, but if that operator isn't part of your buy-in, and I, as the president of the company, come and go, hey, we just bought this, you're going to use this, I can make it fail miserably.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because I didn't have any input. The guy who's running the job should be the guy that chooses your work holding. And as an owner of a company or president of a company, I'm the first president in the history of this company that didn't ever say, I don't know, what would you do? And because in the past, it was like, I'm the president, I make those decisions. I don't want that kind of pressure, man. I'm never the smartest guy in the room, nor do I want to be, but I always know who is. And when I tell customers, if you're indicating a bison, I can show you in about 3 minutes how to double your throughput. And I get this, come on, is that realistic? I mean, Mike, when I shipped you that first plate, Mike Maxey came in to show you how it worked.
Yeah.
And I remember talking to your guy, I think it's Chris, correct?
Yep.
And he was like, that's amazing. He could also repeat within 2.5 tenths. I was like, okay, that's what we said. And he's like, but is that consistent? I was like, yeah, it should be for a year.
Yeah.
Well, that's on a small plate. I said, I don't care if you have a 100-inch plate. It's the same 2.5 tenths. Wow, is that possible? And then you explain it, you're like, wow. Well, if I don't have to indicate anything again, put a vise on, push the button, I'm off and running. Go to my next job, take that piece off, put my fixture on, push a button, I'm off and running. And now, not only can you reduce your setup time, but now we have the ability through technology now. You know, when I started, the technology that's available today is the difference between a brake fort and a 5-axis machining center. Now we could put monitoring in work holding. You could actually make work holding fully electric or mechatronic. There's so many options now that you have. You can monitor a manual fixture to know that it's operating correctly. And people just look at you like, how's that possible? And then when you show them, they're like, oh my God. And then when you tell them how much it is, they're like, oh God, I thought it would be hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then you tell them for 15 grand, you can get them up and running and doubling their productivity. You would have to be either A, so wealthy you didn't care, which means you wouldn't be that wealthy, or B, you're oblivious. And either way, my tolerance is very little for either way anymore. I believe that if you're shown something and you still don't believe it, then you have to overcome that some other way, because I'm not here to be your therapist either. I mean, I tell people I'll do work holding therapy all day long, but if I get I went home last night and I told my wife I spent $20,000 on work holding. She wants her fur coat. I was like, I'd get a different wife, So, or I'll tell you what, you want to save yourself some money? I'll sell you a fixture and I'll get rid of your wife for you. So it's perfect. I'm your best friend now.
I love it, Larry. Hey, you helped us create a bigger audience of people who believe in making money and don't believe in indicating. So thank you so much for joining the call.
No problem, Nick. And this is what I love about this industry. It's giving me the ability to give something back. And I love the fact that you can tell people something, but the fact that we can prove it is my favorite part of this whole job. I just said, I've done this for 45 years. I've never worked a day in my life.
I love it. We'll call you again soon and get some more wisdom from you, Larry.
Please do, guys. Anything we can do, let us know.
Awesome.
That's wild, but totally understandable and totally relatable. Like how you could get there over many years, and without the right mindset and approach. So how did you even? I mean, I understand you went through lean training and you understand some of the SMED and external and Pokioke and those things, but like the offline presetter and where your gauge line, like how did you learn those things? That seems like something a machinist knows that you would not know.
Well, I would say listening to a lot of podcasts. The first one I started listening to was Business of Machining with John and John. And it's amazing because it would be to 99.9% of the world the most boring podcast ever. But for me, it was like being in the boardroom of two people that ran machine shops having a conversation, and I didn't have to talk. I could just listen to them have a conversation about what they were doing. And so I started picking up on what other people were doing. And that's why these podcasts were just invaluable for me, because, listening, to other people that have been through it, it rolls off the tongue of somebody who's been doing it for a long time. But I'm picking up on all those little things as I'm listening. And then Casey, my right-hand man, has just been amazing. And he was walking through the auction with me, and I found a Haas VF0 that had been used to cut graphite and it had never cut any metal. And I got it for a really good deal. And he said, what we really need is that right there. And so I started researching, presetters, and we were able to win that at an auction. And then he's helped me with that transition to getting all of our setups to preset lengths.
Yeah. Some of what you just talked about is years ago, I created this setup production guide. And, it's a pro shop download asset thing, but inside of it are just like completely universal principles, right? Like just follow these clear, simple steps and you will cut your setup times in half easily, 50% reduction all day long, right? Here's the things a programmer should provide for the machinist, right? Here's the things you should do where you kit the job in advance before you actually come to the machine. You should have a cart with your tools touched off in the right holders with the right extension lengths, with the right EDP numbers for the actual cutting tool. You should have the fixture identified in advance and on the fixture or on a pallet. You should have all your inspection equipment that you need to sort of do your first part, assuming you can do it at the machine and not on a CMM, right? You should have the wrenches that you need. You should have like all these simple things. And the bottom line is the machinist should show up at the machine with a pre-kitted job and a clean machine that's been torn down from the last job. And they should never have to leave that machine before they get a first part off, a good part in their hands. Right? You should not need to dial in a vise. You should not need to figure out where your 0 point is. It should be, a fixed thing, pinned 0 point fixturing, calculated from, where this hard tooling point is. It should be right in your frickin' G code, right? Set your offset based on where you stuck the fixture on your fixture plate or what, like so many simple things that have such a dramatic effect. So I'm really glad you talked about this real world example of all this crazy stuff that was status quo, so much non-value added effort and taking 12 hours of the machine not running. Like but it's so common. It's so common. So I'm really glad we got into that topic. Man, that's good. Hopefully people are writing their notes and just, it doesn't need to be complex. Grab your legal pad and literally just go walk around with a stopwatch or just your watch and just
write it all down and then
log what happens,
It's all about data.
Reset your step meter. You did 5,000 steps and 20 hours of non-value added work, right? Oh my gosh. So beyond, getting rid of old machines, sort of getting rid of this very low hanging fruit, just waste in the process, what other things did you tackle to try to, get way more efficient and, ship as much revenue with half the number of people kind of thing?
Yeah. So I've been trying to buy, a machine per year. So the one we bought last year was a Doosan NHP 5000. And right away when we got it, we got tombstones. We got, I started working with another CNC shop here in the area, Eagle CNC. They found me on the website, my old website, and came in and said, hey, we see you have this lathe and you can run this part for us. And I said, well, let me check on that. And I'm like, yep, we can run it. And they have been really helpful. And that's why what I really like about the environment of being in the CNC shop world is there's not a lot of contention or fighting, amongst different shops. I mean, Eagle sent me their training guides. They sent me their setup sheets, copies of the note sheet that they would first shift would write for second shift. They toured me through their plant, kind of showed me how they had it set up. Just super helpful. And so when we got this machine, I had already set up to run their parts. And so they had Jergens, ball lock adapters for their pallet changers. And they were running large pallet changers too. And so I became an overflow shop for them. And I set up plates that would match their plates. And so now if they bring a fixture over, I can drop it on my two largest horizontals. And it's like click, lock, bring the program in, and we can go. So we got this new 5000. And I'm like, all right, well, we're going to have it. It can now adapt between that, and we've got a 6300 larger Doosan 630 millimeter horizontal pallet changer. And so we have tombstones on it. Now we have 4 sides, and I had a bunch of vices here, and it's a little bit hodgepodge. I've got 2 chick vices on one side, and I've got a couple Jergens vices, and then we bought a 5-axis vice set. And so now we can do, all 4 sides, and the changeovers are a lot quicker. And so we've been making our own plates and mounting the vices to them. So that's been a huge win. And everybody's starting to see like, oh, yeah, we can just come up here, put the plate on, lock it down, you pull up the program, and you're off and running. Just a lot of technical challenges. We were trying to do high-speed machining. So we took on, I took on a part, and it's like, okay, we can make this part. And we would pull a program. We switched over to Fusion 360. Again, after listening to all these podcasts, I'm like, everybody's using Fusion 360. And we were using a MechSoft pirated version. And then another guy using a different version because Lance would not buy any software. So made plenty of mistakes, bought, AutoCAD the first year and nobody used it. I feel like I just burned $10,000, right? And after listening to these podcasts, it's like, what we need is Fusion, right? And Casey's like, I'll learn it. And then I had another young guy, Cole, and he's like, I'll learn it. And so now we're using Fusion. And so then we drop our program in, and it's like memory not large enough. Oh, yeah, because all the machines are so old, they just couldn't even accept, the thread milling and the things that just had a lot of code to get the spirals and to do things quickly. And so it started building this business case. I mean, the business case for buying the new Doosan horizontal was eliminating equipment maintenance by taking the burden off older machines. And I actually justified to myself as the owner the purchase, and a monthly payment of $4,500 based on the amount of repairing of older machines that we were doing. And now we're kind of in this process of converting. We had a lot of pallet changers, 3-axis pallet changers. So we're converting off the verticals onto the horizontal and getting it into 4-axis and cutting the number of operations. Well, we've had some other huge wins. It was I don't know if it was a mistake or not, but the Doosan rep stopped in and he said, "Hey, you were looking at that 2600 SY lathe with the bar feeder." I'm like, I was, but I wasn't really going to pull the trigger. And he said, "Well, there's one across the street. I've got a rigging company right across the street, which is come in handy. I mean, they can drive down the road and into my driveway here." And he's like, "I can get it to you for 2019 pricing because the guy that bought it doesn't want it anymore." And so I kind of went out on a limb. Actually, this is why you got to know your numbers better. So this is after year one, and I'm like, okay, we made $180,000 this year. So let's buy this machine. And it was a deal where I had to, have 30% down, and then they divided the payments out into, over a 6-month period. And I'm like, okay, we can make this happen. So I bring this machine in and we install it. And then, the payments start rolling in, and around April, it's like, wow, cash is getting kind of tight. I know we're making money. Looking at my profit and loss statement, it's like every month we're in the black, right? And yet the money is dwindling. And so I started, and it's kind of embarrassing to say, because I did accounting 1 and accounting 2, and I did finance, but there's a difference between cash flow and your profit and loss statement. And so I started looking at the differences between the two. And, you can show that you're making money in a profit and loss statement, but the amount that's adding to your cash flow is a lot lower. Things that are not in your P&L is going to be principal payment on your loan. So if I've got a $10,000 payment for the company and, $6,000 of that is principal, that doesn't show up on the P&L. Just the interest shows up on the P&L. Mm-hmm. And so I got kind of a forced awakening into really understanding cash flow versus just a balance sheet and a P&L. And we got through it fine. One time I had to dig into my line of credit for just a little bit, and it all worked out, and I'm glad I did it. Then that machine sat there for a year. I barely ran anything on it. So I had this machine that I just paid for, and it's got a bar feeder on it. And we didn't really know how to program it. I didn't realize that you had to, buy, I had to go buy Royal, chucks, at $5 or $8 a pop, and then live tooling. I didn't realize that, 1X live tooling is going to be $2,500 if you get a generic brand, and you get a Z live tool, and it's going to cost you $5,000, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000 for every live tool. So, I got the machine and kind of skidded in, got it in here, and it's nice. And we ran a few parts on it, but it took me another year to really understand how to use it, or for the team to understand how to use it, and then to really start collecting and purchasing all the tooling, which is another, $20,000, $30,000 that I wasn't aware of.
For sure. Yeah.
I learned a little bit there. But now,
and then you found you got the tooling, you got the right part numbers for it.
Yeah.
It's cranking.
Yeah, we do a little part that's for an old tank. It's like a tank engine rebuild part. And it had 6 operations here, including an outside operation to have somebody broach it and then send it back. And we're now having that machine run it and it's down to 2 ops, and it does the broaching, so I don't even have to send it out anymore. And it just bar feeds it in and just drops them into a container, right? I still got to have it heat treated, bring it back, and then do a little OD/ID work. But now that machine is booked, and we're needing more advanced lathe capacity. So
that's a win. Wow. Thank you for sharing. Yeah, it's cash flow is, this is a good topic for maybe on Mike's show, but cash flow and profitability are entirely different things. And even when you don't have the little gotcha of your, the principal not showing up in your P&L, you still have the paradigm where you're paying a lot of money up front to get something made, and you may not get paid for it for 60, 90 days plus later. And just that span alone can be hundreds of thousands of dollars. Right.
Yeah.
And you just got to float it one way or another, either cash you have or line of credit or what. And it gets very stressful when they're not balancing out and you're deciding which vendor to pay. And, and it's one of the reasons this is the hardest business in the world, because it's not like once you solve that the making of the money is super simple, right? All these things have to come together for you actually to make on paper an actual margin on that part. And you're not doing it with a 12-hour setup, very likely, right?
No. Or you find the stuff that you were making money, even though you had a massive setup. And then, and that's kind of where I've been squeezing value. I've gotten a lot of price increases, but I've also, all that optimization, we kind of keep for ourselves, right?
You should.
Yeah.
You got to.
Yeah.
Hey, it's Paul from MakingChips. If you've been burned by recruiters who don't understand manufacturing, you are not alone. That's exactly why we created Hire MFG Leaders. We're not just recruiters, we're current and former shop owners, and we know what it takes to lead in this industry. Whether you're hiring your next operations leader, sales manager, or production supervisor, we'll help you find someone who actually fits. Learn more at makingchips.com/hire. So coming back to the list of questions, technical education, is there a community college near you? How are you engaging with workforce development? How are you finding, some of the new people you have hired?
Yeah. I wrote some stuff down so I don't forget, but I go to I had been going to the Muskegon area intermediate school district, has a after high school program for either machining or welding. It's currently not happening because the teacher that was teaching it's unavailable. But in the past, I've done their little job fairs, and then I've gone and spoke to the high school kids, and I've got one good candidate out of that. But even if I don't get a candidate, I'm happy to go help and try to, help the kids, with their careers. Yeah. I've worked with the right place. I know you guys have done a lot of work with MEPs, and that was so valuable to me. And I've written my congressman, and I appreciate, how you guys are, beating the drum on that. On our large Doosan 6300, we were doing these really large presses for Dake. So if you've ever had an arbor press, where you've got the big handle that comes down and is pressing and the big cast iron. So we do the big ones. So some of them are, 3 feet tall and, 2 feet wide, and we're loading them in. And it's very important that the rack and pinion that, would go through the press has to line up to the ram that's going up and down. And when I got here, we would have a machinist, and they would have to go in there every time and measure it. And these castings were coming out of China, so they would be like warped a little bit this way or forward or backward, and they were all a little bit different. And so we'd do a cut, and you'd climb into the machine and you'd measure it, and then you'd go, type in the offset to make the change, and you'd run the cutter again, and it was just taking forever. And I'm like, so I started looking into it, and it's like probing handles this. I mean, this is what Renishaw is made for. And so I had the right place come by, and they were doing their technology 4.0, and they were on a pretty big focus of getting people in cybersecurity. And I said, I know that's really important, but this is what I need, guys. I need help getting probing into this big machine. And they helped me. They worked with me. I paid $14,000. They covered $14,000. We got Renishaw in here. I had a contractor help me write the programming. It took over a year for me to get it fully implemented. But at this point, we can set those castings in. It rotates in. The probe checks it, does all the offset changes, cuts, checks it, makes adjustments, cuts, and they come out so perfect, that the customer was saying, we almost needed the variability because of all our other suppliers were giving us variable opinions and variable RAMs, and we were just sitting here
needed to
mixing and
match them
matching.
up.
And I said, well, I get you on some variability, but from what you're going to get from me from now on, they're all going to be exactly the same. And they were amazed, and now we could turn 10 of them out in a day, where it was just a couple, and they
Wow.
were scrapping them too. Big castings. You need to make one mess up on typing a number in, you're scrapping it,
Sure.
So
wow, those are some wins. That's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and the MEP network is just so essential. I'm glad that some of the trends that it seemed to have started earlier this year have turned around, and it's in a much better place than it was. And so yeah, excited to hear that. And hopefully, the ruckus we tried to raise with MakingChips and some of the other podcasts may have had some impact, but we can.
I'm sure it did.
Can only hope.
I'm sure it did.
So this has been so much fun, and I know we didn't, as I said, we never get to all the questions. Are there some questions on this list that you really want to cover, and that you wrote down some answers, and you want to make sure we don't miss it? Because we can do that.
I'll just say really quick, because the one that I enjoyed was, what most memorable experiences, and I was kind of chuckling to myself because the most memorable experience, I think, was the day that I came in. I was a little bit late, and I walked in and I said to Casey, I'm like, all right, so what's going on? He said, nothing's going on. Everybody came in, they went to their machines. This guy's running 2 machines. He's not even complaining. Nobody's coming to bother me. Everybody's doing exactly, they all know what to do. And it was just this period
no fires.
Whoa, like everybody, nothing happened, like we weren't having to direct somebody or tell them how to package something. And, that was pretty amazing.
Wow. That's brilliant.
I was thinking too about the advice I would give other shops. And one of the things that I've done is because it seems like every day something different is happening. And so make lists, if I was going to give somebody advice, and also sounds bad, but prioritize and then procrastinate. And so it's very easy to get the flavor of the day and I really need this. And my advice would be, one, I had a list of all the things we needed to fix because it was too easy to just fight the most recent fire. And it's like, no, just write them all down. And so at one point, we had a spreadsheet that you couldn't even print. It was like multiple pages of all the things that we needed to get done. And then you just start prioritizing, okay, which ones of those are the most important, are going to have the biggest bang for their buck. And then you start directing your resources, your limited, scarce resources to the most critical problems first, right? You want to knock those off the list first. And it's really challenging in the environment of a machine shop to forget a priority and start working on something that doesn't have the maximum impact on your business, both on the plus side and the negative side. On the plus side, it's so easy to want to buy this and buy that. You had a good month and you want to pull the trigger on something. Somebody will come in and say, hey, we need an optical comparator. And it's great. I'm putting it on the list. Okay, optical comparator, here's a price, you put the price on it. And then they come back around, they're like, what do you think about the optical comparator? And say, okay, would you rather have an optical comparator or 2 digital height gauges on the floor on a cart so that you can roll it out to the station, and a new set of gauge pins, blocks, and XYZ? And they're like, yeah, maybe I don't want an optical comparator that bad, because it only becomes clear when you look at it in a list of all the other things.
Absolutely. In context. Yeah, that makes so much sense.
I don't know. Yeah, we could probably keep chatting, but those are a couple of things that kind of jumped out at me. I wanted to have a conversation, but this might be over a beer on values, because I've got some thoughts on that, but
like core values.
Yeah, on core values and things. But
well, let's bring up the topic, and then maybe we can continue it over a beer sometime, but also maybe asynchronously ask people in the comments when we post this episode about their thoughts on it. So what's the question?
So I was listening because you asked that question a lot. I'm like, man, that is just such a good question. And every time, somebody would answer the question, I'm like, yeah, we haven't written our values down. So I went in and I typed into, give me a list of values, so then I get a list of 60 values, potential values. And then I go out to the shop and I had everybody fill it out. And I said, okay, just circle the ones that you think really reflect who we are. And so everybody took the sheet, and some of them begrudgingly, circled. And then I bring it back, and I compile the data, and I'm like, okay, these are the top 15. And, sometimes I'll go back out, like when we did our logo design, and I'll go back out and I'll say, okay, here's the top choices. What do you think? And kind of whittle it down. And then I was typing into AI, and it's like, hey, here's all the statements that my team said our values were. What do you think some good value statements? And then you just keep refreshing until you get a bunch of good ones, right? And you write them down. And I read it, and I'm like, okay, these are all really good values. I mean, you can't argue with we foster a supportive environment, right? I mean, it's good stuff. But I went offline, and I'm like, okay, what do I think the values are? And so I kind of, I write down the core values as passionate about delivering value to our customer, right? Curious to discover and develop the talents of our team, and I came up with them on my own. And so kind of the stage where I'm at, where I feel a little bit stuck is it too soon to key in on values when we're just kind of at the stage where we're pulling the airplane out before it hits the mountain? Is that the right point to galvanize the value statement? Because the values at the company over time are different at different stages of the company growth. And where I see the values of the company, it was helpful for me to write it down, because then what I can do is I'm trying to coach my team, towards that, how important it is to give value to the customer and not do non-value added work. And yet I want the values to kind of spring organically from the organization, because we're all unique and we're all part of the team, And so I don't want to make excuses for not having a value statement, but I also feel like I don't want to write down values that may change over time and may be more crisp in the future.
Well, I'd say a couple things. Your values, they can change. It's not like if you write them down once, they can never change, in the entire future of the company. The ones that are most core probably aren't going to change even in different phases of a business, right? If integrity is one of them,
right?
You're not going to change whether you have integrity, whether, you're in growth mode or survival mode, or cash is tight or cash is flush, or, those kind of things. Just like if you would hire and fire people over whether they embody that value or not, that just doesn't change over time, right? If you have someone that's just not acting with integrity, or, whatever the value might be that you choose. I mean, that's sort of contrary to, they can change over time, but I think there's, the most core set, and you've probably, heard the various guests saying over time, they just become the mirror with which you reflect everything, all the decisions you make in the company, right? Does this decision align with our values? Does this hiring, does this firing, does this thing we're deciding in this hard moment, let's look at our values and help them guide us to, the right decision here. Yeah, I mean, I think the exercise you went through is excellent. Having it not be just contrived, especially by you or you and ChatGPT together, but involving the team is so essential, because they have to 1,000% buy into it and believe it and live by it for it to be effective. So, but yeah, it's a good topic to have other people weigh in on. So hopefully we can get a good, healthy conversation going. Well, Matt, thank you for buying a machine shop and doing all the things you're doing. It's just so good. It is so good. And thank you for coming on the show and sharing with us. You definitely contributed in a massive way today with this sort of collective group that we have that are listeners. And so you're paying it forward in a big way. And I really appreciate you doing that.
Yeah, thanks so much, Paul. Keep up all the good work. And any way I can help and support, I'm here for you guys. Just let me know if you need anything.
Well, let's finish by letting people know if they want to learn more about Progress Machining or connect with you. How would you suggest they do that?
Yeah, so you can check us out on the website. It's Progress, MACH, .com. If you want to see the old website, it's still up. I got to get it down. That's progressmachining.biz. It's back in the day.
Oh, .biz. Nice.
So you could see some vintage there, but eventually that's all going to redirect through. My LinkedIn profile is pretty robust. You can find me at Matt Fortner on LinkedIn there, and most of my contact information I think is available. But I'm on LinkedIn a lot, so please reach out if I can help. If you got some questions, I'd love to. I don't even need to know the outcome. I just feel like the more good stuff you do, the better off we're all going to be. So, like, if you don't feel bad, if you want to reach out and ask a question, I'm here.
Oh, that's what I appreciate so much about this community. Just everyone's chipping in. Realize that we're all together in this. It's the fight that needs to be fought, and that rising tide lifts all ships. So, all right, Matt. Well, thank you again for a very fun time, and hopefully see you at an event or something in person soon.
Guaranteed.